Okay, so before I do the intro and all that, like, to get pumped, we usually bang some Justin Timberlake. Do you mind if we do that?
They want us to think that we're an insignificant speck of dust, but let me tell you, we are so much more than dust in the wind.
At least 4 billion useless eaters will be eliminated by the year 2050.
I'm still waiting for somebody to show me gas pressure without a container.
I personally don't believe anything they say, right down to the God they claim they worship.
None of the math adds up.
You could stack up all their math books, all their science books, and even put all their degrees stacked up on top of that, and you still wouldn't be high enough to see the curvature.
This is exactly why grounding is so important.
We see too far.
We're just regular people who know we're being lied to. We're tired of it.
The bottom line is, there's only one choice left, and that's to dismantle this whole thing from the top down.
Welcome to the Phone Booth Podcast. Please keep your arms and legs inside the phone booth at all times. We are not responsible for any lost or stolen souls, destroyed realities, or blown minds. I am Ted Theodore Logan, here with Bill, Rufus, and Death. What's going on, dudes?
What up?
What up?
Howdy.
Really?
Glad to be here.
Tonight, we've been waiting for this for a long time to finally get to talk about something we want to talk about. We're going to talk about the fun vaccines with our boy Sheepdog. What's going on,
Yo.
What up,
Sheepdog? What's up, guys?
It's
Thanks
a
for having me on
pleasure
the
to
podcast,
have you.
man.
I can't tell you how excited I am to talk about vaccines since I love them dearly, and I know that you are an advocate of them yourself. Is that correct?
Of course.
Okay,
I was
cool.
an advocate for a very long time.
You know, it's good that now the veterinarians allow them for sheepdogs like yourself. Because at first you
Right.
probably couldn't get your paws on one.
Well, I mean, they started giving me vaccines after they clipped my balls.
So rude.
I know, right?
You and Death have some things to talk about behind the scenes. Anyway,
Whoa.
no, I'm
Right,
just
man, dude.
I'm just messing with you, dude.
I'm still pumping them out, baby.
You know we got. Oh yeah, that's true.
Yeah, you are.
You know we got to keep it funny. So I mean, obviously we have a lot of other things in common that we would love to talk to you about, but since people have very little attention span, let's start with that, and then we'll get into some of the other stuff later.
Okay. Well, I mean, like, obviously talked about the vaccines, but I also wanted to talk to y'all a little bit about, like, COVID, like, on the backstory and everything.
Oh yeah, no. I mean,
so we'll go
yeah,
on
from
all
the
that.
very beginning, man. I know you were
Yep.
there, so you saw more than we did.
Well, I tracked the timeline down, too, all the way back to when Carrie Mullis died. That was the beginning of it.
Is that
Believe
the
it or
one
not.
that quote unquote died?
Now that's the one who
Like-
said Fauci was a fraud, and
Yeah,
he's the one who
inventor of the
created
PCR test.
PCR. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But he-
Okay.
He died. So just to give you a little backstory, so Carrie Mullis died like early September 2019, and then the Chinese, was it War Games or the Military World Games that they host every year? That began in like the middle of October. So yeah, it was almost kind of like a prelude to what was leading up to COVID-19. Like, we don't want the guy that knows what's going on to speak out. So let's just go ahead and, give him pneumonia, this so-called pneumonia that he mysteriously died from.
Yeah, I'm sure that's what killed him. That's
Wow. Okay. So this guy, you're pretty sure that they gave him the first test run of this stuff, or they just shut him down however they could?
I mean, it says that he died from pneumonia. And, if we remember, COVID in the very beginning was a very potent issue when it came to pneumonia.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as like COVID goes, like, we all thought it was a virus when it first came out. We were all freaked out. But, looking back on it, I remember looking at him like, this doesn't look like a virus. This looks like someone's been poisoned. Like, that's all I kept thinking the whole time was like,
Right.
This reminds me of a snake bite, literally. The way people couldn't breathe, the way they were breathing, um, like the way that their body was not reacting to everything. A lot of it didn't make sense. And that was all leading, like, I didn't even know, obviously, about COVID until February when everybody else started hearing about it. And that first Thai person or whatever, Nepal person died.
Mm-hmm.
That was the first time we ever heard of it. And then and it's like, oh, okay, well, what's going on with that? So then, at that time, I've been doing lots of different research. I've learned how to research, get around the algorithms. And the earliest article I could find was in December of 2019. It was talking about this mysterious pneumonia that was going around in China. That was the only thing that I could find at that time while we were getting ready to go into lockdown.
So nothing else had been put out yet. Just getting ready to lock people down.
Pretty much. Watching it all go down and everything like that. Like I knew the story they were telling us. Like they're like, oh, it came from bats. I'm like, that's bullshit. It's like no virus has ever jumped species.
Wait a minute. So are you saying the official narrative isn't true? Is that what you're telling me?
The original official narrative, yes, was I never believed it to be true.
Yeah. Neither the day it came up, I was like, looking at my wife, I was like, this is bullshit, right? Like the people just dropping in the streets in China, like, come on.
Yeah,
well, they weren't dropping in the streets. That's the thing.
Streets.
What were you saying?
Oh, I was saying they had videos of guys just like seizing out on the streets and people pulling up and taking them away in stretchers, and it was just something else.
Was that before the vaccine or after?
See you later, YouTube.
Yep, there you go.
This is in the hype leading up to it.
Okay.
Like,
I don't know if I saw that. I remember seeing the lockdowns where people would like hear a knocking on their door and they would open their door and there would be a bar across their door and they couldn't leave the room.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
They were welding doors shut, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's crazy, dude.
Yep.
For your safety. It's for
your
safety. Yeah.
So why was it originally the coronavirus, which we all know is just the common cold, right?
Right.
Why was it that, and then it became COVID-19? Was that a narrative issue, or was this a different strain? What was that?
So, like, to be honest, they've never really like isolated the coronavirus. I don't know what the deal is with the coronavirus.
They've never isolated any virus, by the way. But yes, let's not get on that right now.
For the sake of talking, right? So, like, the difference between the coronavirus and the SARS-CoV-2. So there was SARS-CoV-1, and it was like a superjet coronavirus. And that was in 2003. It's like 4,000 people that were affected by it or something like that. And then it was the end of it. And it went away. And then they developed some vaccines for it in 2005. And then they did some more. Obviously, like we learned later that they did gain of function on it. And this is where SARS-CoV-2 came in. And the reason why SARS-CoV-2 is like so unique was this like spike protein that was on the edge of it. And let's see if I can remember this.
Is that like the spike proteins that they put in the vaccine?
Yeah, believe it or not. Actually, it's not, you're not even getting a spike protein in the vaccine. You're getting a mRNA template, right? Yeah. Like a facsimile. And then it goes into your nucleus, and your nucleus is programmed to print out that spike protein and present the spike protein to your immune system. So like it basically imagine taking a shit in your hand and then handing the pile of shit to the cop in front of you and saying, "Here's my spike protein."
Excellent analogy.
Right?
Yeah.
So the spike protein was special, right? Like nobody had ever seen it before. It was super awkward and everything like that. And what would happen is so the spike protein would go to the cell, and then the cell would immediately recognize it as something was wrong, and it would clip it, right? Well, when it clipped, the virus wouldn't go away. The extra portion of the spike protein would then re-inject itself, and it's like, oh, I already clipped that. I guess it's the same one, and then it would proceed to allow it to facilitate in. And that was the whole premise behind the virology of the spike protein. Is like it would. Have you ever seen the Minority Report?
Yes.
Remember when you had the three psychics, and two of them had one dream that went one way, and one of them had another dream that went the other way?
Yeah.
Yes. Correct.
So it's kind of like that. Like the cell is like, oh, the dream went this way, and it never recognizes the second injection.
Huh.
Kind of weird, right?
Yeah.
At least that was the premise behind it.
Right.
But what caught my eye, so just a little quick story. So I'm working in the ER at the time when all this was going on. I've been a paramedic for 14 years, 13 years when it happened, 14 years total. And I remember telling my charge nurse, like everybody was like kind of bickering about it. Oh, it came from bats and everything like that. And I remember looking my charge nurse dead in the eye. I'm like, you know, that came from the lab, right? And I'm like the only conspiracy theorist in the whole ER. Apparently nobody had the balls to speak up.
Yeah.
Oh.
And my charge nurse is like, no, it didn't. And she like went on. I was like, okay, whatever. And I left it at that. And like 6 months later, she comes up to me. She's like, I need to apologize to you. You were right. And I was like, yeah, I know I was right. Nobody wants to listen to me, but I know I'm right. Just kind of like, okay, cool. But all right. So back to the spike proteins. So at that time, like they were talking about like vaccines, right? Like now that they know what the spike protein is doing, they're and what the virus is kind of doing, they're talking about vaccines. And this person kept showing up in my news feed, or I kept reading about him, and his name was Dr. Byram Bridle, Byram Bridle, Bridle. And he's a veterinarian from Canada, and he's like extremely well versed in virology and immunology and all that stuff, and he helps like build vaccines in Canada. And I'm reading about him, and he's like kind of speaking up a little bit, you know, kind of going against the grain a little bit. And one day he comes out and he says, spike protein is the toxin. Like they're trying to create a vaccine around the spike protein. He's like, no, the spike protein is a problem. It's the toxin. And I remember that striking me odd, like, why is he calling it a toxin? Right.
Yeah.
And, you know, just kind of like sits in the back of my mind for a little while. And it just keep moving forward. Well, like right now, if you look up Dr. Byram Bridle toxin, you're not going to find the video of him calling it a toxin. You're going to find every single news article fact checking him saying that the spike protein is not a toxin.
They love
Wow.
it.
So just so y'all know, like
So
that's
they
how
wiped
deep
it.
that is.
Right.
Yeah.
So, oh man, and you haven't been able to find it since, huh?
Me specifically, no, but I'm sure if somebody dug around and listened to enough videos long enough, they could, because like it was clipped in like a minute and a half video, but I think his interview is like an hour and a half long. I'm just not going to sit through an hour and a half of like
Right,
15 different videos.
Right. We need to start using Yandex instead of Google. I want everybody to write that down. Yandex.
Do they have an English one?
Well, it works. I mean, it doesn't always pull up stuff in Russian, but I've been pretty successful at finding stuff that I haven't been able to find in a long time. And shout out to Robot Polisher for turning me on to it.
Awesome.
There you go.
Thanks for telling us about it, Death.
Everybody needs to know.
No, that was sarcasm. Like you waited till now to tell us about it. That wasn't a fucking pat on your back, bro. No, I'm just kidding. I love you.
So the
All right.
timeline here, was it, sorry to interrupt, was it, I'm
Go
just
ahead.
trying to get a grasp on the timeline. So is this still early 2020 that you're hearing about this?
So the toxin thing by Dr. Byram Bridle,
Mhm.
that was I think in like June or July of 2020.
When they were really starting a heavy push to get the quote unquote vaccine done.
Right. They were in Operation Warp Speed.
Right.
Like, you know, like you start hearing about the vaccine probably around like early May. They're like talking about making a vaccine. They got a couple of like companies that are making it or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But like as they're doing the research, that's when Dr. Byron Brattle comes out, and that's when he says that, like July or August, somewhere around there.
Can I just pop in here and say, because you were just talking about when they were talking about a vaccine, let's just remember for a second, and I, if you've noticed, I try very hard to stay out of politics for the most part. I don't know how long I'm going to be able to hold on to that with the election coming up, but for right now, I've always tried to stay out of it. But do you remember in the beginning when, because obviously it was under Trump, when they were talking about a vaccine and every freaking Democrat was like, if it happens under Trump, I'm not taking it. I'm not going to take it because Trump made it.
Oh, yeah.
The
I remember all of
second
that.
it switched offices, all of a sudden it was the greatest thing ever. Like, the same substance now is awesome. It's so phony. It's so ridiculous. Anyway, carry on. Sorry. It's just...
Well,
that's why I
speaking
put
of,
it in quotes. So.
Yeah. Well, we didn't know that, bro. All right.
Speaking of that, going back to when COVID first started, right? So the Military World Games in China, right? Just to kind of give you a little backstory on that, was from, I'm pulling up the Wikipedia. I love Wikipedia. It's so stupid.
Dude, I love Wikipedia and Google simply to use towards normies because I want to show what they believe. That's how I use it. Like, look at what you believe. Anyway.
So something weird, right? So the opening games was October 18th, 2019, and the closing of the games was October 27th, 2019.
Okay. I'm
going to take you to a tweet by Joseph Biden before he became president of the United States. This is on October 25th, 2019. This is still while the war games are going on, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's before October 27th, after October 18th.
Yeah, right in there.
Right. So Joe Biden states, this is his quote. I'm reading it verbatim right now on Twitter. "We are not prepared for a pandemic. Trump has rolled back progress President Obama and I made to strengthen global health security. We need leadership that builds public trust, focuses on real threats, and mobilizes the world to stop outbreaks before they reach our shores."
Okay, now that people have heard that, list the date of that again.
October 25th, 2019.
There
this is
you
2
go.
days before.
Yes.
2 days before the games were over.
Yeah.
Wow.
And also right before a fucking pandemic happened.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's a rumor out there that says that the war games was where the outbreak happened. Some people say that like different soldiers that came home after the games were extremely sick and they couldn't figure out what was going on.
Yeah,
They just
what
called
better
it
way
a
to do
pneumonia.
it? You got people from all over the world coming to one place. You get them sick, they all go back to their places. Then you can't pinpoint where it came from because it's popping up everywhere all at once.
Do y'all know where the war games took place?
No? Where?
Wuhan.
Oh.
No. Come on. That's like I know he's a freaking liberal but I'm sure you all have seen that thing about Jon Stewart after all of it finally coming out and saying how ridiculous it is that it didn't come from Wuhan about how there's a chocolate outbreak or whatever in Hershey, Pennsylvania. Like it's near the place that freaking does it and it happens and y'all are just going to say,
It coming out during the war games is like the most plausible option for me. Looking at all the crazy theories that are put out there, like it coming out of the war games makes the most sense to me.
It was a bat. It was a bat and a pangolin, you dumb fuck. Whatever that is. I don't even know what that is, but it happened.
I've never heard of one before this year.
Sorry,
that,
I know, Sheepdog, you didn't know what you were signing up for. Sorry.
What even is it?
Oh, no, you're good.
What's a what?
What's that?
What even is it?
What's what?
The war games?
Virus? Is it?
No, wait, hold on. Say it again.
Can you not hear me?
No, I can
Well,
hear
yeah,
you.
you-
I just feel like I say it wrong all the time, and I want to make you say it wrong too. So go ahead.
The Thing.
I love you. I love you.
Ian
That's
Anderson.
awesome. I don't know what it is. I don't know. Do you know, Sheepdog?
South
Say that again.
A pangolin or whatever the hell it's called. The thing that the bat had sex with or whatever.
I
That,
know.
or mate.
South Park
No,
made it-
I'm not talking about the thing that the bat had sex with. It's
Oh.
like
You know what? I'll look it up real quick because this is
virus. Is it?
it's got to be a giant bat.
So wait, what's
Right,
what? What's what then, Rufus? What
Oh,
were
it's-
you talking
it looks
about?
like it looks like an
thing
armadillo.
saying everything's sick. Everyone's sick. Is it a
It look-
virus? Is it
It looks like a possum.
poisoned?
Is what, Rufus? What? So hold on. It looks like
Hold
a
on.
possum.
Yeah, pangolin looks like a possum. Or
So it is
anteater
pangolin?
armadillo.
How's it spelled?
Pangolin.
Boom. Okay, I'm not
Okay.
retarded. So wait, Rufus, what were you talking about?
Oh, I'm not talking about the animals at all.
What? Way to stay on topic, bro. No, I'm kidding. What were you talking about? Unless I
No, he had a
changed it.
question about like.
I want to know what this thing is. What is it getting? What's getting people sick? What is making
Oh.
them
Right.
sick? I mean,
Right.
what is it that's needed to be vaccinated against? Because there's a lot of different theories out there, and I mean, we're 3 years in, and we're still trying to piece this together. Or are we sure it's a virus? I mean, I don't know. I don't have as much information on this as everyone else, so I would just didn't know if maybe
So
down to like figuring out what this thing is. And
We're
why
not
it's making-
asking you what the 100% factual thing is, because
right.
I don't expect you to know that. What
Right.
What do you think?
What have you seen, experienced, basically?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, I think it's some kind of a poison, like poisoning the water, poisoning food. So, like, if you remember, like the ancient times, how did they destroy like massive civilizations or like thriving cities? Right? They would just poison their water supply and poison their food
Mhm.
during the
Yep.
trade and everything. So that's what I think was going on. They were just trying to weaken us, whatever poison they were putting into our food and water supply and everything. Like we would never know, we wouldn't see it. The reason why we become immune to it, though, is almost kind of like if you've ever watched the old Zorros, when he would like sip on a little poison every once in a while just to build his tolerance up.
Dude,
I think that's kind of like what it was.
The
He built
Princess
that tolerance.
Bride, bro. The Princess Bride. All right. Have you not seen that? You
I
can't
began-
beat a Sicilian in a battle of wits. All right. So yeah, no, he slowly drinks poison to build up a tolerance to it. I think it's the
Yeah.
same thing you're talking
Yeah,
about.
it's like when you're a teenager and you get drunk off of one shot.
Yeah.
Right.
40 years old and you could drink a whole bottle. And
How many teenagers are you getting drunk?
But it's still killing you quicker than if but it's obviously still killing you quicker than if you weren't drinking.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's that.
But there was what's his name? Doctor starts with an AR. I always forget his dang name. Let me look it up real quick. Dr. Artist. Did y'all ever see his videos?
No.
I don't know. I'm bad with names. I would know faces, but I'm bad with
Yeah.
Dr. Brian Artist. He's a it's funny because he's a chiropractor and he figured this shit out. And I'm like, oh my God, it makes so much sense. So he was at a medical learning thing where a bunch of doctors get together and listen to one doctor speak,
Yeah.
they just all gather together.
Mm-hmm.
And this doctor was talking about using anti-venom for like helping to cure COVID-19 when you're in your like worst stages. And he walked up to the guy afterwards. He's like, what the fuck do you mean? Can I cuss? Am I allowed to cuss?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes,
That
sir.
was awesome.
He's like, what do you mean anti-venom? Like that sounds so ridiculous. And the doctor looked at him. This is his story. He says the doctor looked at me and was like, what are you a doctor at again? He said he was a chiropractor. He's like, you should go back to that. You don't know what you're doing. And he's like, well, just humor me. Why anti-venom? He's like, what do you think monoclonal antibodies are? And he went and looked it up and he's like, oh my God, like we've been poisoned with snake venom and they're using monoclonal antibodies, which another name for monoclonal antibodies is antivenom.
Isn't that what they use for like rattlesnakes and shit?
Yeah, it's the same shit.
That's crazy, dude.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people talking crap on that theory that it's snake venom.
Well, I will say this, even if it's not snake venom though, the main thing that snake venom does is it thins out your blood, all your capillaries, all this other shit.
Well, it'll clot you too.
Yeah, it does a lot of crazy shit. So a lot of the things that happen, even if it wasn't snake venom that they put in them, if it was something that mimicked the symptoms, the antidote or whatever the hell you want to call it would help still either way. So even if it's not actually, even if they didn't milk a bunch of snakes, I'm just saying it's a possibility, you know?
Oh yeah.
Snakes have nipples?
Little tiny ones. Little tiny ones. But yeah, so there was that, and then so once I heard that, that led me down the whole rabbit hole where I'm looking up like SARS-CoV-2 snake venom. And I kid you not, like once you put those two together, SARS-CoV-2 and snake venom together in a search engine, you'll find scholarly article after scholarly article on the comparison of the two. It was like, oh my gosh, ding, we found something. And they can't hide it because everybody's researching it. Like I remember seeing clinical trials for or not clinical trials, Getty images of people injecting horses with snake venom to help create a mRNA vaccine.
Oh wow.
Damn.
Yeah. So it really threw me through a whole loop when I was going through all that. And that was pretty much it for the whole SARS-CoV-2. Let's see. There was one more thing. Yeah, so back when we were like starting to get locked down, right?
Mm-hmm.
Going back to my tweets, and I put it in my highlights for everybody to go look. I didn't find this until August of 2021, so a year and a half after the fact.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember kept telling myself, I'm like, this feels like watching people come in, like you would look at a household of like 6 people, right? 2 parents and 4 kids. And like 2 of them would get extremely sick, and then the other 2 wouldn't have any symptoms at all, no matter how much they spent together. And they were making you like, this thing was lasting up to like 3 weeks, 4 weeks long in the very, very beginning.
Yeah.
And it was scary. It was really scary. They later on dubbed it cytokine storm, but it also had, like, to me, it had the same effect as like snake venom for like angiotensin 2 hypertension, which it's like highly above your head. But basically angiotensin 2 is a hormone in your lungs that causes like severe vasoconstriction. And when you go to like take deep breaths, like you can't, it really hurts because everything's so tight and squeezing down, clamping down. And so you tell someone to take a deep breath and they're like, I can't, it hurts. But they're breathing like 50 times a minute trying to stay alive because they're going to die if they stop breathing, right? But I mean, this wears on you. Like I could see like you could do okay maybe after like 3, 4, 5, 6 days. But like when you're on week 2, you're on death's bed, man. No pun intended, dude. But yeah, no, that was why people died in the very beginning, was because of this like particular disease. So people think of disease and they think it's like a bacteria or an infection or something like that. All a disease is like how your body breaks down during a process. That's it. It's that simple. So when someone says, oh, you got a disease, yeah, your body's breaking down in a certain way and it's trying to recover. That's it.
Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, like some people would get sick and others wouldn't. And I'm like, what do these people not have in common? Because they share everything in common, same food, same everything. What do they not share in common biologically? And like you would have a male and a female get sick, and then the other males and females wouldn't. It's like, well, what's the one thing that they would be diverse in that frame? And it would be their blood type, right?
Now we're getting to it.
Oh, okay.
Now we're getting into the nitty. I knew it was coming.
So
Damn.
so I'm like looking for it. I'm like I'm trying to find it, can't find anything on it. Then one day when I was doing a search on SARS-CoV-2 and blood type, this article pops up, and it's from medrxiv.org, and it was written in March of 2020, right? And it was basically
Sheep, you there?
Yeah, I'm
Oh,
here.
okay.
I'm here.
All right, cool. Just making sure.
I'm
We
trying to
like to
pull
get
up this
zapped.
article. So this article, it says the relationship between the ABO blood group and the COVID-19 susceptibility. So in March of 2020, in the very beginning, they already knew there was a correlation between who was getting the sickest and who wasn't.
And they just
And it was,
ran us around for so long.
oh, for sure. Most people won't find this either, but it's printed, it's published, and it's written by a whole bunch of Chinese doctors. So they already knew.
So here's where I'm, and maybe Rufus is on the same where I'm at with this. Like, is I don't really know a lot of people that got it per se, but the ones that did went through it no problem out on the other side, right? And then now they're advocates of, not getting the jab, right? So
Right.
was this just this? All this was it was never meant the quote unquote virus itself was never meant to be the killer, correct? It was to introduce the vax in order to be the killer. Is that basically where I'm at?
So you got to crack a few eggs to make an omelet. And so in the bigger picture, for those who are in charge, a few lives doesn't matter for the whole picture.
Do you know people that have actually passed away from this thing itself?
Yeah, like when I was in the ER, I did CPR on people who were having these severe symptoms at the time. Like as it went further along, it digressed, in nature,
Okay.
and it wasn't as powerful. People were still coming in sick and everything like that. But in like the first 4 months, man,
right.
that was hard, dude. Like it was like, what the heck? Because I've seen every kind of illness that could possibly come through the door, even stuff from other countries. Hell, I was on an ambulance doing my 6 years as a paramedic on an ambulance. I was stationed in the hospital when they had that lady come in, or not that lady, that guy that came in with not malaria, not anthrax. He came from Africa, remember? And the whole hospital went on lockdown. Like all
Ebola?
airports went on
Ebola?
Ebola. Yeah, there you go. I was working at that hospital on the ambulance.
Really?
Yeah, doing 24-hour shifts there.
I'm glad we're doing this over the internet and not meeting in person, bro. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask you, dude. Like, what was it like being on the front line during like the beginning in the whole thick of thing? No one knew what was going on. Were you getting a lot of people that were like really sick in there, or was
not
it,
not at first.
More mentally, people freaking out because of what?
Not at first. So when we went on lockdown, remember they were telling everybody don't go to the hospital if you're just like mildly sick or you have a mild injury or if you have a headache or something like that.
Yeah.
Like leave it for the COVID patients. Well, I remember we were getting like 10 or 15 patients a day. And we're like dying to stay awake in the hospital. We're like, oh man, we're all so bored. We're all like on our phones, just constantly looking stuff
So
up.
for the people who don't know, how many patients would you get on an average day before that?
About 160.
Okay, so there you go.
Wow.
So less than 10%.
Wow.
Right about 8.5% there. So, and I will just add that I'm a strong. You would know better than me. I'm gonna say a lot of things in this that are my beliefs. You probably know better than I do. I'm just telling you what I believe, but that a lot of the people who didn't go to the doctor because they told people not to go ended up getting things or not taking care of things that they should have and ended up dying or worse off because of that.
So surgeries were canceled.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. Yeah, I remember that part.
Like surgeries were canceled. Like the whole thing, like it was really screwed up. I remember like people who needed like back surgeries and they were in constant pain, or they needed something amputated
Yeah, they're just
because
like,
of
no, you might get a
diabetes.
cold.
Right.
Yeah,
Like hindsight's 2020. I was scared. I was scared in the beginning because I didn't know what was going on.
A lot of people were.
Yeah, because you were on the front lines. Luckily for me, I had the whole thing of I never got worried. And I'm not trying to sound cool. I know a lot of people did. A lot of people I care about did. A lot of people I respect did. I'm not saying it was an intelligence thing, but for some reason, I never got worried. I never even thought about getting the vaccine. It was just like, maybe it's where I am. I'm in Florida. Like, it was a little different here than some other places. But as soon as this shit started happening, I was like, look at this shit. I'm not doing that. What the fuck? I'm like, yeah, I'll just stay away from people a little bit. I never wore a mask. I think I wore a mask twice because I had to at my grandfather's, like, his wake, basically. They made you wear a mask to be in the place. Other than that, I don't think I ever wore a mask. So I was lucky, but I know it was different for a lot of people, and especially for you being there on the front lines, I'm sure it was very different. So don't think I'm belittling your experience. I'm just telling you mine.
No. I'll be the first one to tell you that, like, most people, like the majority, like more than 50%, are like pansies when it comes to their own medical problems, and they seek out a doctor for everything instead of trying to figure it out for themselves.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
But I mean, that's the way the system is set up, right? It's set up to be a money grabber.
Well, yeah.
Yep. So.
Yeah, I never saw anyone that was like deathly ill from it.
I mean, I guess I technically got COVID. I don't know because I never tested, but my wife got sick, and in order to go back to work, they make you test. And she tested positive. She only went to a place once. She's like, I'll never do that again. And then they came out with like the home test. So she was sick and she tested positive, and I was sick also. I never tested, but I'm assuming blah, 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 But it was, to me personally, my personal experience, it was a flu.
Yes.
And it lasted slightly longer than normal. But I'll also say this, in 2019, in December, I specifically remember, before anyone had ever heard the word COVID, me and Bill and my wife and my boss actually at the time all got sick and were like, man, this is weird. Like, it feels like the flu, but I've been sick for like 3 weeks. I still have a cough. This is weird. Like, we just wrote it out and went through it and still went to work, but we took note that it was different. And then a couple weeks later, we heard about COVID, and we're like, oh, that must be it. But other than that...
Yeah, I knew people that said they thought they had it back in November of 2019.
I believe it's possible, for sure. Well, wait, when was, when were those, the war games? October?
In October, yeah.
There you go.
But it's weird. It's, it's a little bit different than the flu because it's got those monikers where, you lose your taste and smell. It's really weird. Like, I think you could... Yeah,
but I think
I don't know. Like, I lost my taste and smell when I had the flu before.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
I think people just started saying it and noticing it. That was a thing when I was growing up, that my mom was like, go ahead.
There are some people.
After I tested positive. Oh, I'm sorry, Sheepdog. Go ahead.
I just going to say, some of the people that I know that tested positive for COVID and they're convinced that they had COVID, like, they still to this day don't have any taste or smell.
They got fucked up.
Whatever.
Yeah, that was that jab up the nose that did it. Like,
yeah, right. After I tested positive the first time, because I tested like 6 times, and I tested positive every single time. I think you could test a pair.
Right. I'm trying to get that free week off work.
Hey.
Go ahead, Death. Yeah.
Like after that, in my smell and taste and everything went away when it came back. the bread that I used to make my sandwiches tasted it smelled like kerosene for like 6 months.
Your wife was trying to kill you, just so
Yeah. No, you know what?
She's like, the
watching
COVID
Snap.
didn't take him out. I'm gonna soak his bread in kerosene.
She's been watching Snap too much. That's what it was. You're right.
But they were keeping everybody indoors, right? So it's obviously it's going to last longer than normal. Does that sound about right, Sheepdog? Is that like way off? I mean, going outside, getting sunlight, you know what I mean? Like I've always worked outside in construction and stuff like that. So even when I thought I got it, quote unquote, I was stayed home one day. I was like, I'm not doing this. I'm going back out and I'm going to tough through it. And in 2 days, it was gone.
Dude, this man never took a day off when he was sick, though. I'm just saying. He'd be at work with a fever, busting through it. Like
I have a little problem. I have a little bit of a problem. I'm a workaholic for sure. But that's another story for another time. But I mean, can you jive with that?
So yeah, like I mean, it would hit other people differently, but like definitely the outdoor thing was the thing. So the biggest thing was like it's always like this no matter what, like when you're sick, because you can worry yourself sick, right?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
So the key is like when you start feeling sick and you feel broken down and things like that, so you got to pace yourself, right? Like instead of going 100% or 110% like we normally would when we feel great, maybe we only go like 90 or 85% or even 80% depending on how we feel. It's like, hey boss, I gotta take it easy. I'm gonna work hard, but like if I gotta take a break, I gotta take a break. Okay, cool. No problem. And you get more done even by being there than being off. And then you just kind of like work through it. And then maybe like you go 2 or 3 days, you're like, boss, I'm still not feeling good. I need to take a day off. You take a day off, you wake up, you go outside, you stretch, you breathe in some fresh air, you maybe cook something on the grill, you finish your day off, you go to sleep. The next day you wake up, you're feeling great, and you go right back to work working 110%.
Mm-hmm.
So I get that.
It's true.
I also think the sun's good for you. Me personally, I think being out in the sun is good for you. You get shit you don't get anywhere else. So
yeah, that's why I think the timing of the lockdown was so suspect too. I mean, they're trying to lock us down right as we're going into the springtime.
Mm-hmm.
And our immune system goes up. I was like, dude, why don't we like try and ride this out during the summer, and then if we need to, look into some other measures in like the fall and winter time when people actually get sick.
That's just because you want to murder people's grandmothers, Rufus. Don't you remember? Grandma killer! It was so ridiculous, man.
It really
was the grandma killer.
I will say this. It made me miss about a year of my grandfather's last year of his life. He did live to be 104, so I can't complain. But a bunch of it was gone because by the time COVID was over and we could be around again, he mentally wasn't there. So it was like the last parts of when he was mentally there were gone because those assholes.
That sucks, dude.
Damn, that does suck, man.
Yeah, and I remember they made this big deal about it with New York because they had this policy in place, like, oh, if you have COVID, like they treat you for 3 days and then send you back to the nursing home where all the healthy people are, right? Yes. And it's like, well, why the fuck are you doing that? Like, keep them in the hospital for a few more days, let them work through the symptoms and everything, and then so the whole nursing home would get sick, and then. So it blew up on the news in New York, right? And so everybody thought that it was going like that all over the country. And to some extent it was, but it really wasn't, because like we didn't have the lockdowns like New York had.
So basically you're saying Cuomo's a murderer.
Damn right I'm saying he's a murderer. The fact that he is still walking around, he should be in jail right now for life.
Yeah, him and a couple other ones. I can't remember them off the top of my head right now, but
that douchebag.
No, I'm talking about a few other governors who did the same thing.
Okay. I thought you were talking about
there's way more than a few that shouldn't be walking around. But there's a few other governors that put sick people back in nursing homes, and it's disgusting.
Crazy story about my hospital, right? So this is early on in COVID, so masks weren't mandatory in the hospital at the time. So it's like, okay, whatever. Like you would wear a mask when you go in a room, but when you're in the hallway, you didn't have to wear a mask. And so
Nice.
I'm watching this like demented patient, right? And she's fairly young, but she's got early dementia. And she can't keep getting out of bed, right? And it's a fall risk. So it's like, okay, I have to sit in the room so the nurse can see all her other patients. I got to sit in the room and watch the patient, make sure they stay in bed. Patient listened fine. Like they just would forget that they're not supposed to get up and they would keep trying to get up. No, 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 you're supposed to lay back down. Okay, yeah, you're right. You're right. And it was just kind of the funniest thing ever. So I sat there for like, oh God, I don't know, 6 hours before the COVID results came back and they were COVID positive and I didn't have any mask.
Oh,
And I'm just going back and forth,
cool.
like setting this person back, like, no, 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 like I'm right in their face every time trying to help them back to the bed. And it's like, oh, they're COVID positive. So like that right there tells me that something else is going on with
for sure,
that disease.
I will just say, to sidetrack real quick, God bless you for what you just said, that you sat there all that time and made sure that a fall risk didn't get out of bed. Because not to get too much into it, but my father was in care for a long time before he died, and he was getting better, and he was a fall risk, and someone wasn't watching him, and he got out of bed and fell and hit his head again. And that was the last time I ever heard him say a coherent sentence in my life. So thank you for staying there and doing that.
Oh yeah, no problem.
That's awesome, man.
So, and then another side note on that whole thing. So that person that came from the nursing home. So the reason why they came from the nursing home was, so like 6 of the patients at the nursing home tested positive for COVID, and 2 of the employees tested positive for the COVID. And then once they found out that at the nursing home, the entire staff of the nursing home walked out and left the elderly there by themselves.
Jeez.
All because they were afraid of COVID.
That's fucked.
Yeah, people got crazy. People that I know and would reluctantly now to admit, but that I would say I respected before this, definitely let me down in a very big way, the way they acted during all this. It got crazy. It got insane, man. Like, people my mom was friends with her whole life wouldn't see her anymore because she wouldn't get vaccinated. Like, it's just insane stuff. I can't even believe what happened.
Yeah, it's just a little taste of the way that people will react in times of crisis.
Could you imagine if the power goes down? Like, God, it'll be like
Look
Mad
what happened
Max.
when the toilet paper ran out.
I know.
Oh, I know.
Man. And let's just say it ran out
crushed over a roll of toilet paper.
It ran out for no reason.
For no reason.
It ran out because everybody bought it because they thought it was going to run out.
There was all this food, and people were so worried about wiping their asses.
Look, man, you got a water hose, all right? Deal with it.
I'll tell you.
You got a shower.
Drink out of it. I can wash my butt with one.
That's when I seriously started thinking about a bidet.
Yeah. Bidet to you, sir.
Right.
I was like, bidet to you. I was like, what the fuck are we doing wiping our ass with paper? We need to be washing that shit.
You heard it here first. Death has a bidet.
I don't yet.
I will say this. There was this dude. So in a band I was in on tour, if anybody's ever been on tour, you don't shower for days, blah, blah, blah. We won't get into that. But he always, the one thing, you're broke, you're not eating right, the one thing he always had was baby wipes. And I'd be like, man, like, you're barely eating and you're spending money on baby wipes? He's like, let me ask you a question. If you got shit on your hands, would you wipe it off with a dry paper towel and then just say that's okay? And I'm like, oh, damn, dude. I think you got me, man. I don't know if I can argue with you anymore. It's like, all right.
Motherfucker brought you out the Matrix.
He did. Right there. I was reborn.
That moment you were awakened.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was it for me.
Nah, dude, my wife got
9/11?
pregnant right before the lockdowns, and that's when I got scared. I was like, oh, my wife is pregnant, and there's a virus going around, and they're
go see the doctor.
It was gnarly.
And they used to not let you go in, right? Like you'd
I
have to
was
stay out.
I was the only person allowed in the hospital when he was born, and I could only leave one time every 24 hours.
Oh my God.
Yeah. I was like,
and you
okay.
couldn't rotate out. Like let's say he left and waited 24 hours, somebody else couldn't come in. It was only him that was allowed
Only
to come in.
him, right?
Yep. Yep. That's how
And
it
like
was.
if the other rule that we had too was at my hospital, this was a rule. So like let's say the father was at work, mother's getting ready to give birth to the baby, and the mother-in-law is there for support. Like the mother could be imminent, right? And so they're like either you can come in there and be with her, or you can leave and then we can wait for the husband. But if she has the baby, then she'll be having the baby alone.
Jeez.
And they're like, well, what about like, if the mother-in-law goes in and stays with her, and then they just switch out? Nope. Once the mother-in-law goes in, only the mother-in-law can stay.
Yeah. The rule makers are fucking demons, period.
Yeah.
I know, and show me the science behind all this, by the way.
Oh yeah. No, there was no science behind it. It was all about control.
What a shame, man. Again, we were, being in Florida, it just wasn't that hardcore.
Well, being in Florida and being who we are, it wasn't that hardcore because
that too, right?
There was a lot of people here who because the news said it, whether it was a rule or anything, like, I mean, even here, remember the tape on the floor telling you which direction to go down the aisles at Publix?
Oh my God.
And the spots to stand and it was such...
Standing in the elevator and facing the four corners.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I never did any
See
of
that right there, I'd lose my shit. I would lose it.
I will say I did the when they had the spots where you stand for the line, I did that only because I don't need that argument while I'm trying to buy
the
milk,
drama.
man. Like, come on. But I wasn't wearing a mask, so anyway, sorry, Rufus. What were you saying?
Oh, I was just saying, it was just so perfectly timed too with the, we were all had so much to process at the same time as, the election just went down, and we're transitioning from, the president that kind of almost made us feel empowered to speak our mind and do what we want, as opposed to the new regime where it was, everyone's speech is being impeded upon and you have to be careful. So, as far as like running a business is concerned, you have to be super careful about the way that you would run things and what you would say, how you were handling the COVID protocols, and granted, you're trying to work with a bunch of people who were just on the government's dole and getting paid to do nothing, and no one wanted to come back and work whatsoever. Mm-hmm. So they're looking for any reason to be able to get out of work sick. They're like, you had people who were testing multiple times, like just to come up with the positive result so they could get some more free money without doing anything.
Yeah.
And there was nothing you could do about it. I mean, the people who were in power just kind of handed all this power over to these individuals who wanted to be lazy. And, we all saw the consequences of what happened.
That's part of the reason I think it was a test run for a lot of stuff. They want to see.
I was just going to say, it sounded like an exercise the way you were describing it, didn't it?
Yeah. How many people would comply? How many people would willingly give up their jobs for universal basic income? And as far as I could see, almost everyone would, except for the people that like are real motherfuckers. Like, I didn't miss a single day of work. Not one. I didn't miss one day. And I did city contracting, and there was days when people at the city weren't working because of it, but we were still there. We were still doing it.
Wasn't that BS though? Like, oh, I'm essential, so I can do this and I can do that. Like, oh my gosh, dude.
Dude, my wife's job handed out shirts that said, "I'm essential." Like, they thought it was fucking funny. And I'm like, and she thought the same thing. She's like, "Do you believe this shit?" I'm like, I know, man. Like, So, and they're like, well, they gave it to you that way if a cop pulls you over because you're not supposed to be on the road. Like, are you fucking
What?
serious? Yeah. I mean, that's the kind of shit you were hearing on the news. So that's
Right.
what a lot of companies were going along with. Like, only essential people are allowed out. Don't be out if you're not essential. Like, dude.
I know they did that in DC.
Yeah, they did it in Florida too. Well, they said it on the news in Florida, but never once was anything stopped here, ever.
Nah.
Yeah, they didn't enforce shit in Alabama at all. Like, we heard all the stuff on the news, but
I think that's what a lot of it was. It was just the areas that would comply. It was like they tell you that it's a law or it's a rule
Very
or it's
heavily blue areas.
just like
throwing that out, okay?
Sure.
I can tell you from experience, because Ted can vouch for me on this, where he still is and where I was is a very heavily blue area, right? But then I went up northern Florida, and it was like Death Saying. It was like Alabama.
right.
Yeah.
And it was more of a red portion of it. So
that's why we got lucky here, is because more of Florida is like that. Because there's only a few. You got Tampa, you got Miami, Fort Lauderdale area, West Palm. That's all one area. And then you got like Jacksonville, Gainesville. But all the rest is Southern boys. All the rest is red.
Right. And in 2022, it was almost like a litmus test, right? Because then all of a sudden, all of Florida became red. And it was just like this. Oh, I highly doubt that's a coincidence.
I've been thinking about that so much since Biff Don said it. It was a free will test, dude.
Yeah.
And I think he's 100% right.
Or like a shit test, when a girl gives you a little shit test and they just
yeah, sure. I think it's the same thing.
Same thing. Y'all remember when Nancy Pelosi said she was essential and had to go get her hair done while the whole state was in lockdown?
And all that ice cream.
I have to go buy alcohol and ice cream. Okay, dude. I don't even think she's a person. I'm just gonna throw that out there. I think she's a Muppet.
You got them heavies though.
Y'all ever see Beetlejuice with Gina Davis, where like they were doing that ritual and she was like dying her second death? That's what Nancy Pelosi looks like.
when she tries to beautiful and her jaw falls off.
Yeah.
Dude, I love that movie. It's so good.
It's awesome. So fast forward, I guess. You are now okay. So this time period, you're already researching this SARS-CoV-1, CoV-2, all that.
Right. I don't know it's snake venom yet. I didn't find out it was snake venom until like August, September of 2022.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So you kind of
at least I didn't compare it to snake venom. I was just doing lots of research on SARS-CoV-2, and like I did a little bit on SARS-CoV-1, and like SARS-CoV-1 was the test run for SARS-CoV-2. Like they did it in China, and then so a funny thing about China that y'all may not known about this. So they announced that they were going to go on lockdown in China, in the entire province that surrounds Wuhan. Like the rule was like you couldn't travel from Wuhan to anywhere in the country, and nowhere in the country could go to Wuhan. But Wuhan could leave the country and go anywhere in the world that they wanted to. And so like 5 million people left in like a 24-hour period. And that was documented on like January 5th of 2020.
Wow. So what makes it airborne? Did you explain that, or did I miss that part? Or
so the airborne thing is like when you cough, like there's little spit particles that come out when you cough, and that's what makes it airborne. And so like if you rub your nose and then touch a surface, that snot is now on that surface. That was the whole purpose of it being like transmissible airborne type stuff. Like
I think what he's saying though is if it's snake venom.
Snake venom, right? Yeah.
That was the thing. Like I said, I was taking care of that person that kept trying to get out of bed, and they were testing positive for COVID, and they had a little cough or whatever. I didn't care. It was like, okay, cool, it's a little cough. Like they're not coughing on me, so I'm not worried about it. And so I never saw it as airborne. I'm like, what do you mean airborne? Okay, it's aerosolized. Okay, so that's something completely different. But I never saw it as like what they said it would be, like airborne, just like hovering in the air, like a dust cloud as you walk by, like somebody crop dust and it just lingers in the air.
Yeah, so if this is snake venom, like how is it being administered?
So my theory was, do y'all remember, did y'all ever see the articles where like food plants people were testing positive for COVID like crazy?
Yes.
Yeah, so like the food packaging plants and stuff like that, like Brazil had their chickens test positive for COVID. In Africa, their fruit was testing positive for COVID. Um, Another country had their ice cream test positive for COVID. But if you look at it like were they putting it in our food, right?
Right. I see where you're going with this, and that would explain the spread, the high spread of it, right? Because obviously not everybody's running around when there's a quote unquote pandemic and like, oh, speak to me,
Right.
no, really close to my face, so I
Right.
can get spit particles in my mouth. Like, yeah,
Right.
I get that.
And so like if you look at the beginning, like everything leading up to Memorial Day weekend of 2020, it wasn't that bad. Like I mean, the people I saw were sick, but like it wasn't crazy, right? Like we all knew it wasn't crazy everywhere. And so Memorial Day weekend, we were all going out and enjoying family and friends. Guess what happened Memorial Day weekend? George Floyd decided to chew on some heroin and some or some fentanyl and some methamphetamine.
Mm-hmm.
That is not what happened, sir. A police officer put his neck all willy-nilly, his knee willy-nilly on a savior's neck. And that savior died that day. Thank you, sir. We'll move on from there.
Okay.
I'm just kidding.
But no, like like everything leading up to that, like it wasn't as bad as they thought it was. And then they saw that everybody was going to go out Memorial Day weekend. That's when I think they were starting to put it into everybody's food. And that's why like the end of June, July, it started taking off. And then we had from like July to October of everybody was just like, chaos. Like the hospitals were filling up everywhere. People were dying, but it wasn't that as bad as people said it was. The people that went to the ICU would end up on remdesivir and they'd go into kidney failure and they die.
Mm-hmm.
And that was just part of it. Like another one was like they'd put them on the ventilator and they would have the ventilator settings too high and it would blow out their lungs and they would die. And that was just another one. There were many different factors that were involved in that. But from July to October of 2020, that was everything leading up to, the vaccines being rolled out. Like we need to get these vaccines out because these hospitals were overrun. We were overrun. Like we had like a tent section that was out in the main lobby on another portion of the ER.
Mm-hmm.
And we would take people there that if you didn't have any cough or fever or anything like that, like even if you had like a broken leg, well, no, not a broken leg, we'd take you to a room. But like if you had, a headache or something like that, we would take you over there and just get you knocked out real quick and send you on your way. Because we were just overrun. We were seeing like 180, 190, close to 200 patients a day at that time. And that's a lot when every patient on average spends about 3 hours with a nurse.
Rich, 3/4 of it was fear, in a sense, right? Like any little.
I would say like 2/3. 3/4 is on
It's
the
a little
high
high.
end, yeah. But I would
So
say
you're
2/3
dealing
for
with
sure.
So you're dealing with like 2/3 of the people coming in there basically just out of pure panic.
Yeah, for sure. They would come in, oh my gosh, I tested positive for COVID. All right, well, do you have a cough? And it's like,
Right.
let me put a pulse ox on your finger and see what your pulse ox is. Oh, you're statin 99%. Here's some Tylenol. Go home.
Yeah. COVID was the first virus to spread through the TV.
It was.
That's
It
how
was.
it
It was
happened.
So
autosomatic.
basically, in short, you're saying that there were some real, legit, straight deaths from this thing that it is, right?
Yeah, they had comorbidities though, man. Like you're looking back on all of it, they would either have like lung cancer, emphysema, diabetes,
right. So it wasn't
weight
just the venom
issues,
just taking them out, right? Like in
or they have
some,
a sedentary lifestyle. Like they would be like geriatric with like they've had like 5 knee replacements.
right. So they're
They've had a
already weak
stroke
as
or
it
something
is,
like that. Yeah.
right?
So they're not getting up and moving too much.
Did you
So-
see anybody who was a healthy, able-bodied young person die of it?
So
That
one of
wasn't
my
a drug
cousins,
addict.
one of my cousin's childhood best friends, he's a bodybuilder. He was a bodybuilder leading up to when he died. And I mean, they have their own little health issues, but he looked like a healthy dude. Like I saw a picture of him, and I was like, "Oh, damn, dude, he died." And like, yeah, man. And the story was it's the same freaking story, man. They come in for COVID, and whatever is going on, whatever regimen they have them on, and I think I know what it is. But so they come in for COVID, and then they have to sit in the room all day long. They're not allowed to get up and walk around. And then because they're in the room all day, they're kind of depressed, so they just stay in bed anyway. Well, then they're sedentary, and then it just kind of like sits deeper and deeper into them. And then when they go to get up, it hurts more for them to get up. And this is lasting, 2.5 weeks of illness, which is extremely like no bacterial infection ever does this. No virus infection has ever done this to my knowledge. Not for 2.5 weeks, like maybe a week, 10 days at the most.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, like he wasn't getting better. So they took him up to the ICU. And so you're in an even more confined room up there. You're not allowed to get out of bed and all that stuff. Well, then he just kind of gets worse. I think he's panicking at this point, maybe even. And then he just, he can't breathe as well. So they, for the sake of being less of a burden on them, they'll do what's called like a sympathy intubation, where they'll basically medicate you down to where you're, medicated out, and they'll intubate you and then take care of you and let your body recover, and your mind will just be like completely doped up.
Yeah, so you don't notice there's a tube down your throat or your nasal
Right.
passage or whatever. Yeah.
Right. So then he's not doing too well. I guess they put him on because he's in the ICU, so they put him on the remdesivir protocol. He goes into kidney failure and dies.
Oh,
Same thing with Rob Skiba.
oh,
That's exactly what happened with Rob. You won't hear his family talk about it much anymore.
I was gonna say I didn't even know that. So,
But that's what they said. They said that Rob's wife was not around one day, and they just went ahead and went with the protocol.
oh, oh man, that's dude. Like none of this crazy crap was going on where you were working though.
So I don't know if they were doing remdesivir up in the ICU. I know my respiratory therapists were telling me that people were dying left and right up in the ICU, but then like whenever you hit the code button on the wall, whenever somebody goes into cardiac arrest, you hit this code blue button on the wall, and then it alerts the whole hospital to come and assist. And so if people were dying left and right, then obviously they didn't need any help up there because they weren't hitting that button, like it takes at least like 5 to 6 good people in there plus a doctor to do CPR very well, right? Like
Right.
a paramedic and an EMT can do it on the way to the hospital, and you're doing CPR for like 10, 15 minutes. But like when you're in the hospital, we'll do CPR for an hour and a half.
So yeah, you there were never code blues like that.
Not they weren't calling them over the hospital system or anything like that. Occasionally we go to the floor and do one. It may or may not have been COVID, but you always treat it like it's COVID when it's CPR. Everybody has to gown up. But in the ER, like they didn't start remdesivir in the ER, so
right. So basically,
so either people weren't dying or they weren't calling anybody to help when they were dying.
Exactly.
Right.
Oh man.
But they did do monoclonal antibodies for a little while, and then people were getting better. And then all of a sudden, the FDA said that we weren't allowed to do monoclonal antibodies anymore, that there was a shortage.
Yeah, that happened here too. It's ridiculous.
And so we were limited on that. And then like COVID like got drawn out just a little bit longer. It wasn't like there was an increase in patients. It was just like a steady flow of patients over a longer period of time, right? Like we were trading them out.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my gosh, dude, like this is ridiculous. Like this could be all over in a heartbeat if we could just do, you know, the
Anti-venom.
the Zelenko protocol.
I heard about that being shut down in Florida specifically for some reason. I don't remember why.
I remember that too.
But it was after Joe Rogan was going on talking about monoclonal antibodies for everybody.
Y'all want to know something else that's really weird too? So when Trump was president, like they had already disseminated who was going to get the vaccine, like right at the end of his presidency.
Right. I remember.
So September of 2020, like I guess he already knew that this was going to happen. And so he contracted, like he basically like went to India and he's like, y'all need to start making hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin. And they did. And it was curing people. And then the World Health Organization shut it down, said that you're not allowed to do that. And so they stopped. And then 3 months later, there was like another huge outbreak. And they were fighting it. And they were like having issues like maintaining their oxygen supply and everything. And then so some doctors were like, fuck it, we're just going to start treating people with hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin. They did. 5 weeks later, it was completely cured.
Oh my gosh.
5
nothing
weeks.
To see there. Nothing.
Country.
Wow.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Well, wasn't that something to do with the emergency protocol for the vaccine? And if there were any other ways that they could treat it, then they couldn't have the emergency protocol on the vaccine?
Yeah, so the rumor is that if they could find a way to treat this thing without the emergency authorization, then it makes the emergency authorization null and void. And then they have to go back to the standard protocols for bringing a vaccine.
And then the emergency authorization was to put it into use without the amount of trials and testing that they would typically have to go through before releasing it to the public.
Right. So so at the time there was no known treatment for this SARS-CoV-2.
Supposedly.
And so that's why the vaccines were rolled out.
Oh, so what's the difference? Cool. What's the difference between SARS-CoV-1 and SARS-CoV-2?
So SARS-CoV-2 is like an exotic SARS-CoV-1. So you got coronavirus, and then you got SARS-CoV-1, which was made in a lab in China. And then it had an outbreak, and there was like 4,000 deaths or something like that. And then, but the country was like on strict lockdown because it was like, I don't know, like maybe they were test running it, and it broke out real wild. So they're like, oh, we got to lock it down. And so they did, and then it went back into the labs. You don't hear about it ever again. I remember reading about it. Like people would have like scarring on their lungs, like Legionnaire's disease or something like that on their lungs from SARS-CoV-1. And so that was kind of a big deal. Well, It went back into the lab. They did more testing, and that's when SARS-CoV-2 came out. Or at least that's what it was named. Like I'm sure there's like a whole bunch of different ones, but the one that got brought into the world is then labeled SARS-CoV-2 because it's the next one up, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they're completely different. They did gain a function on this coronavirus that created SARS-CoV-1, and then they did another gain of function to create an alter. It's basically like an add-on. Like if you buy a video game, and you got all these little extra add-ons for like season 1, season 2. That's all it is.
It's just an upgrade. Let me upgrade
That's
you.
That's all it is.
We're gonna bring it up some.
So like the first version was like the brown moccasin snake, and then the second is like a cobra.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Why are you talking about serpents, bro?
Right.
So what's the protocol anyways for treating a snake bite? Has anyone tried like that protocol on
So
the COVID victim and what the results are?
I've heard that ivermectin helps slowing the process. Um, so I would assume hydroxychloroquine would also, based on what I've read on the research, like so in virology, right, when it comes to like mRNA strands and things like that for hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin, I'm not sure which one is which, so I'm just going to say it in order. And if I got them switched around, then so be it. My bad. So hydroxychloroquine would retard the mRNA strand.
Whoa, dude! Don't talk about the Globies when they're not here, man.
Nice.
Settle down, Sheepdog.
Right. And then ivermectin would prevent the replication of the virus. That was like those two together would basically ensure that the life of the virus, the lifetime of the virus, so the life expectancy of the virus would be minimized. And that's why those two were so great together.
So I've
That's an off-label.
I've never heard Dr. Fauci say anything about this, so I'm gonna have to call bullshit, dude.
Okay. Actually, I read this. Who did I read this? I think it was an NIH article, like PubMed or something like that. Fauci's an interesting character, man. He really did say that hydroxychloroquine kills SARS-CoV-1 or SARS,
I believe
like
it.
COVID or whatever. It was freaking stupid.
He said a
Little
lot.
side note on hydroxychloroquine. You know what hydroxychloroquine is used for? The main use?
I used to,
I do not.
I think.
I think I've heard it, but I don't remember.
It was used to treat malaria in Vietnam.
That's right. Yes, that's right.
Right, and it's still used to treat malaria to this day. Do you know what an off-label use for it is?
Snake bites?
No.
Okay. Yeah, it's
like snake bites? No. I don't know if anybody's ever used it for snake bites. I'm sure they could probably use it in a test trial to see if it does anything. But
right.
It's used in treatment for HIV, lupus. What else? HIV, lupus, psoriasis. I kid you not. It's used in autoimmune diseases.
Sounds like they should be using it, and they're not.
Oh, it's crazy. When I read that, I was like, no way. No wonder it does what it does, because it like your body is going to replace the cells that like aren't acting right?
Yeah.
But if you can dumb those cells down to where they can't, hyperfunction or anything like that, your body can fix itself. It can put itself back on track. And that's all that the hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin ever did for those who were taking it. I never had to take it. I'm fortunate.
So basically now you've tied it in, right? So obviously blood related and blood types. You noticed that the blood types were getting hit harder. So how does
specifically A negative, A positive, and O positive?
O positive, really?
Mm-hmm.
So
O negative, B negative, and B positive.
Because I'm not, I would say I'm not up to speed on a lot of this medical stuff, but where do autoimmune deficiencies and blood types relate, or blood in itself? How do they coincide?
So autoimmune diseases and blood types don't correlate.
Okay.
Autoimmune diseases are basically, which is oddly enough, we can get into that once we get into the vaccines, but the autoimmune diseases are your body doesn't recognize itself on a certain level, and so it attacks it and tries to kill it. That's what type 1 diabetes is. When people they have type 1 diabetes, or adolescent diabetes as they call it, That's when your body attacks its own pancreas. You got Crohn's disease. That's another type of
What's the
autoimmune
one where
disease.
the pregnant moms, like, their cells attack the baby cells? You know what I'm talking about?
That's not an autoimmune disease, but that happens with.
That's a blood type thing, though, right?
It's an Rh factor, yeah. Like
Okay,
the mom will
that's
be
what I was. Okay,
positive, and the baby will be a negative. And if there's any like as the baby grows, the placenta separates and reattaches itself. And if there's any bleeding involved, it can become a threatened pregnancy. And so because the mom might be a Rh positive and the baby is susceptible to being Rh negative, they can't really tell at that early of an age, but they'll assume based off of the mother's blood type that this may be what's happening. And so they'll give them that RhoGAM shot.
Gotcha. Okay, I was just trying to tie it in with the Nephilim and stuff like that. I was hoping I was going to be able to tie it in and be like, there it is. There it is.
They're trying to kill all the gingers.
Right. Of course they have souls.
Yeah. Sure, bro. Sure. My beard's red, so I can't really talk too much shit.
Me too, dude. Me too.
So let's get into the vaccines. You just mentioned those. So what's your take on those puppies?
So, like in the very, very beginning, I'm like, oh, cool, they're gonna rush this thing out, and like they're like mRNA vaccines. And then the more I'm doing research on mRNA vaccines, and I'm like if I was the government and I wanted to track everybody and put a kill switch in them, I would do it through an mRNA vaccine. Let's face it.
Right.
So I'm like, no, I'm going to hold off. And in the very beginning, like the healthcare workers were the first ones to get the vaccine, right?
Lined up.
November, December of 2020, like before any word of a vaccine was even out in public, they were already offering the vaccine in the hospital to the workers. And they were like, hey, do you want it? And I was like, I was the only one that said no, bro. I was the only one that said no in my ER, at least on the days that I was there. I was the only one that said no. And then that went along, and then public came out like around February, March, like the elderly were getting it and people with autoimmune diseases were getting it. And that rolled over into May and June. And then what happens? They make it mandatory. Like, it's not that the government made it mandatory. Jobs were making it mandatory. And they were like, well, you do what we say, or you can go find a job elsewhere. And I don't know about y'all's state, but my state is a right to work state. So they can fire you and you can leave just as equal. Like, you don't have to stay, right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was the thing. They made it in their policy that you had to take this vaccine. Well, so most hospitals didn't have an opt-out. My hospital gave us an opt-out. We could file for medical exemption or religious exemption. And medical exemption is easy. All you have to do is be allergic to one of the ingredients and you're exempt. Well, this thing's brand new. Nobody's ever had it before. So how do you write a medical exemption on something that's never been done? And so I know a lot of people that became religious real quick.
Exactly.
And so, that was my first religious exemption. And so I filled it out and I got approved for it. And at the time, I'd already been on the fence about the flu vaccine. I've taken every vaccine, even the anthrax vaccine from when I was in the Army. So I've taken them all. And I was a huge advocate for vaccines leading up to the COVID vaccine. I'm like, I'm not sure about this one. It's never been tested. But I'm already on the fence about the flu vaccine because why do I have to take a vaccine every 6 months or every year? Like the polio vaccine was once. I've never had to take another polio vaccine again. You tell me that and every time I take the flu vaccine, I get sick.
Yeah.
Every single time. And so that led me into eventually exempting out of the flu vaccine as well. But you know what? I'll just go ahead and say it because I really don't care. I hope everybody out there listening, if you ever want to Like you have a right to your own autonomy, your own body. So I'll just say this. So my COVID vaccine, my exemption, right? I'm like, I'm scared I'm going to lose my job. And I'm like, so I'm Googling how to get a religious exemption from vaccines. And instead of getting like people's excuses on how to get a religious exemption vaccine, I start the search result populates on like how to uh, tell if your employee is lying when they're trying to get a religious exemption.
Wow.
Wow.
Damn.
Oh, wow.
And so they have this protocol, and so I'm like reading through. I'm okay, what would make me exempt from this thing? Like, what would preclude me from getting this exemption? And the things like I do not want to take this vaccine. I do not believe I need to take this vaccine. Because it's all about me, 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 me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and I've had some like legal experience from the past. Not that I've been in trouble with the law, just like family law, and I had to do some research and everything. But so I'm like thinking about legalese at this time. I'm like, okay, I'll word it this way. I will write, and if I don't get it, I don't get it. But I wrote, I believe my God does not want me to take this vaccine. So I'm now committing myself to a higher authority. God is telling me what to do, right?
Yeah.
Making me look like a damn schizophrenic. And so yeah, I got my religious exemption. So there you go. Anybody out there like you want your religious exemption, just say, hey, I believe my God does not want me to take this.
That's the way to do
Just
it,
like that.
apparently.
So that happened, and it was crazy too. Like, so everybody that was mandatory to get it, some people left. I knew some of those people that left. I'm proud of them for standing up, but I wish they had tried the religious way out, but they didn't want to. A month and a half later, it's like 40 days after the mandates went out, like the deadline for everybody to be vaccinated by. Like 40 days later, Governor Greg Abbott, the governor of Texas, released those mandates. Like they were no longer like mandatory.
Yeah.
And so you didn't have to get a vaccine. It was a mandatory again after that.
Of course. That's
And
how they
so
always do it.
everybody was pissed. Everybody was pissed.
They throw it out like, oh, you have to do this. And then, yeah, you don't have to. We just wanted to
Right.
see how many people would jump at it. It's
Right.
like every time they do that crap, it's ridiculous.
Right. So that led me into more research about things that were going on. So researching into vaccines, I was researching and I picked up a few terms. Y'all have ever heard of these terms? Probably not, but I mean, they're pretty loaded terms. So autoimmunity is one of them, autoimmunity.
Yeah, of course.
And then there's immunogenicity.
No.
And then there's oncogenesis.
No.
That's crazy. I've never heard of that word.
All right. So oncogenesis is basically a new forming cancer cell.
Oh,
Right.
on college. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's not good.
Now
Yeah.
it makes sense.
Genesis being new, or
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
like newly forming,
Mhm.
onco, new cancer.
Yeah.
You need to speak to us in colloquial terms, bro. It's
For sure. But these three terms,
it's oncogenesis, bro.
yeah.
All right, no, I'm just messing with you. I'm messing with you. Go ahead.
So these three terms, right? Every vaccine shares these same side effects.
Wow.
Immunogenicity, like it doesn't have to be a cancer cell, but like you could get like fat pockets, like lumpy. You can get all lumpy or something like that, or you get fat deposits, or you can get like a weakened immune system or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Like it basically it changes your the way your body functions. That's what immunogenicity is doing. It doesn't correct itself as quickly or rightfully so.
Yeah.
And then there's autoimmunity where like you have new autoimmune disease. that forms. And like, oh, I never had an autoimmune disease before. Well, now you do. Well, like when's the last time? Oh, when's the last time you've been vaccinated? Well, I've always been vaccinated. Well, now you know why.
Oh,
And it sounds
Right.
like the virus shows symptoms of the autoimmunity too. So you're like vaccinating yourself against something, and it has the same side effects as what the virus has in the first place.
So the virus was temporary. The vaccine has been permanent.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I heard you say something about it being like some sort of switch, because you get a lot of people out there who are skeptical because they, everyone around them got the vaccine and most of them seem to be fine so far.
Right.
I know a couple of people close to me who are older who have had some interesting side effects since they've had the vaccine, and they definitely both think that it has something to do with it. But for the most part, most people seem to be fine. So what do you think? What do you guys think is up with that?
No, like so after the vaccine, probably about 6 to 8 months after the vaccine, I noticed an increase in strokes, heart attacks, pulmonary embolisms, um, the like the blood clotting disorders,
For sure.
for sure. And then the other things too, like people would just come in sick all the time, right? Like, oh, I'm just, I'm not normally this sick. And it's like, no, I can tell you're not. You're 32 and you look healthy, but like they just look weak. They look like somebody who's on chemo.
Yeah.
wow.
No, I mean they're not like deathly on chemo, but like if you've
Right.
ever seen people that were like in the
Oh,
beginning stages,
oh
their
yeah,
bodies
no, for
weakened a little
sure.
bit.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, pale, like just
Weak.
like not themselves,
Yeah.
carrying themselves completely differently.
And so when you see these people coming in, are they all vaccinated, or is it something that could be caused by the shedding of the virus or the vaccine too?
So I don't see anything that would like coincide with the shedding. I still lean more towards it was in the food and water. That's what I'm stuck with. It makes the most sense. Is shedding possible? Yeah. I mean, like if you've ever swept your house, you're like, where did this dust ball came from? It came from you, dude. Like 90% of the dust in your house is not from outside, it's from your skin shedding.
Yeah. Skin cells. It's gross, but that's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
So it is it possible? Yeah, but I don't feel like it's uh that easy in that sense, especially like with frequencies and vibrations and everything like that. Like I feel like our bodies do a good job of like um, repelling a lot of stuff.
Speaking of, do you think it's something that could be spread through like a harmful frequency?
As in 5G.
Yes.
Possibly.
I mean, so the whole like I read on 5G, it makes a lot of sense. Like if they go up in the frequency and the kilohertz and everything like that, and your body is like 70% water, so they could do some damage there. But the like like I don't like maybe Havana syndrome or something like that. Like I could see it doing something like that. You'll see it like with the weather, right? Like the day before the clouds form, you'll start getting like a heavy feeling in your head and your chest
Oh yeah.
and everything like
Oh
that.
yeah.
And then the next day, you'll see all the clouds overhead. You'll see the chemtrails being like sprayed into the sky and everything like that. So, but I think it's still subtle. I don't know. Maybe they're still fine tuning it or whatever.
Yeah,
I'm
you
not
would
ready
think
to jump on
everyone
board with
would
that.
exhibit the symptoms at the same time too if they're pumping it out through the waves like that.
I don't know why.
Well, they are.
I don't
Like
know why you
people
keep
are.
yelling at us, Rufus. But if you could stop
getting used
yelling
to
at
his-
us, that would be
He's
great.
getting used to his mic.
Yeah,
I
I'm just
know.
trying to get used to the new mic.
You're
Earlier,
coming in
I felt like you
real
guys
loud.
weren't hearing me.
No,
Okay,
you're coming
yeah,
in
all
real
right.
loud and then backing off.
Coming in hot.
But like if you talk to people, like you're like, oh, like, are you feeling sick today? And like probably 3 out of 5 people would agree with you. Like, yeah, I feel something, but it's not nothing like to shake a leg at or anything like that. Like we all work through being sick.
Well,
Yeah, I
So
feel like I'm like sick 50% of the time.
Yeah, right.
Like real mildly
Right.
worn down, and I don't know if that's a
It's all
problem
in
with
your
the
head,
system
man.
or
It's all in
what
your
it
head.
is,
Let me ask
man. But I
You
feel like we're
know,
being bombarded.
Well, we're
Do you
definitely
drink-
being
do you
spreading
drink
bombarded.
regularly?
disinformation on the internet for 18 hours
Did
a
you
day.
feel
then
this way
A heavy
before
burden to carry.
May or June of this year? Did you feel that way before this?
Do you drink regularly, like at least half the week? Or do you smoke
Yeah, I
cigarettes?
mean it depends on the week. I don't smoke cigarettes, but
You don't smoke cigarettes? So like
drinking
drinking,
goes. Drinking definitely goes up and down though.
Mhm.
right. But I mean, like, I'm not saying like you drink all the time, but like if you drink consistently for long periods of time, like over a month, if you're drinking like, 12 to 14 days minimum, your body's gonna feel more worn down than usual. Like I don't even drink anymore.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I drink water all the time, and even when I feel sick, it's like, all right, let's go, let's get it done.
Oh, I don't take days off for being sick or anything like that.
Oh no,
You
yeah,
feel
I
worse.
understand.
If you sit at home and bask in it, you just feel worse.
That's
it's
what I'm
simple.
saying.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh no, yeah, I didn't take any days off during COVID when everyone got their free vacation.
Just in general, even before COVID, like if I had a flu, I
Well,
worked through it.
especially then.
Oh, dude, the place I worked when we were in the thick of it, if you got the sniffles, they were like, you have to
You know.
leave,
Yeah.
go to the doctor.
That's that
Yeah,
corporate
man.
shit.
Corporate, yep.
My
Yep.
boss was like, "Pick up the fucking pickaxe. What are you doing, sissy? What are you?"
You pussy.
Yeah, I know.
Get back to work, boy.
Oh, your nose is running. Is your vagina running too? All right, let's. I mean, that's basically how it goes when you're a real man. But
Yeah, so what's in the vaccine anyway? What's in the vaccine? We
That's a
want to
good
know
question.
what
So-
the hell is in the
so
vaccine.
since you worked-
when is it gonna kill everyone?
since
you
you
know?
worked for Pfizer, can you tell us what's in the vaccine?
Fucking
So that was
graphene, man.
interesting. So when the vaccines had come out, this is like May or June of 2021.
Yes.
And yeah, so the vaccines have been out for a little while, and like we're getting ready to like start going into this mandatory vaccines, and I'm like, you know what? I'm a medical professional. I can read these research articles and at least kind of get the lowdown, at least a basic understanding. I don't have to understand everything. And so I go to the FDA website. No, I go to the CDC website, and the CDC has their little spiel that they do on like COVID and the vaccines. And so I click on the vaccines and I'm reading it. And it references the FDA. So I click on the FDA link and I'm reading the FDA link. And it has a reference to the CDC. So I click
Yes.
on the CDC link and I'm reading some more on it. And then this references the FDA. And I'm like, okay. So I go back to the FDA. I'm like going back and forth between the CDC and the FDA.
Yep, me
And
too.
I'm like,
Not thinking
damn,
much
bro.
of it.
I'm like, damn, dude, like there's nothing, like they're covering each other. This is bullshit.
Mhm.
Yeah, they're citing
And then-
each other as references. Like, hey, they
Yeah.
said it. Well, they said it. Well, they said it. It's just back and
Yeah.
forth bullshit.
It's like when you're giving out a credit line, like, oh, he's a reference. Yeah, well, and then, well, what's your reference for you? Well, this guy's my
Yeah,
reference. And you just
exactly.
keep, like, Bill's my reference. Well, Ted's my reference. Bill, you just keep going back and forth.
Yep.
Well, so then I'm like getting through it, and I finally see the Moderna website pop up on the FDA, right? Because they're like basically it's getting down to the legal part now. So I click on the Moderna website, and it says you do not have authority to access this website.
Nice.
Well, that's because you're just a nobody, dude. You're just
Mhm.
a citizen that's paying for all this. You don't deserve to see it.
Yep, and about 3
Wow.
months later, they changed like how the CDC and the FDA's website was run, so they didn't have the references that you could go back and forth and see all
Of
that.
course,
But I was
they
glad that
did.
I read it
Conveniently.
when I read it, dude. I was glad I read it when I read it.
That's a thing. Like a lot of the things we know, you can't find anymore, and people are like, "Prove it." Well, I
Mhm.
can't because
it's
they
been
got
wiped.
rid of it.
That's why you're wrong.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
should have been following me 3 years ago.
Yeah,
Right?
Yeah, you just screenshot everything nowadays.
yeah.
Oh, for sure.
I know. I tried.
Sometimes you get lucky, and the Wayback Machine will help you out.
I've had to upgrade my cloud like 3 times because all the crap that I have saved. It's like, nah, you can't save anything else anymore. Sorry.
Like what all the people who ran the CDC back then had in common.
Hey, hey, hey,
Just
hey.
They all used to work for the FDA.
There you go. That's what we were talking
Sure.
about.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
It had nothing to do with their ethnic and or religious backgrounds, okay?
No, not at all.
It's who they used to work for.
I'll have to look into it. I think I'll have to look into it. I think I have a dig on Dr. Birx and Dr. Fauci. Like Dr. Birx, she was, I don't know if y'all knew this, but when she was like part of like the like Dr. Fauci thing in the beginning of Trump when they were doing the warp speed and all that stuff, she'd been not practicing as a doctor for like 15 years.
Oh my god,
That's awesome. Let me just say,
she just had the moniker doctor. Like she wasn't a licensed practicing doctor for like at least 15 years.
just
Nice.
as a layman, I take extra comfort in the term that they call it practicing. I'm just saying.
Oh yeah,
All right.
well, that's what they call it, practicing.
When I take 2 weeks off work and I come back to working on a car, it's like, okay, how to work on a car.
Yeah. Now imagine all those years of
Right.
how to work on the car.
So have y'all ever looked into the definitions of drug and the definition of medicine and the definition of, or you probably never heard of medicus before?
No, like pharmakia and stuff like that. Like
Pharmakia.
right, brushing it, but never, never straight to the point like that. What are you gonna piss us off with now?
I know, right? So drug, right? A drug is a medicine or other substance which has a physiological effect when ingested or otherwise introduced into the body. I have to find the old definition, but the old definition has to do with like a spell or a remedy. And I thought that was really, really interesting. Like a drug in Native American terms was more or less a spell or a remedy.
Yeah.
So it's almost like they were casting a spell on us, right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And then same thing with medicine. It was the same BS. A compound or preparation used for the treatment or prevention of disease, especially a drug or drugs taken by mouth. So like a compound, right? Like it's just a mixing of chemistry. Goes right back to the whole casting of spells and alchemy and all that stuff. And then I came across a medicus because I was looking up doctor, and it talked about a medicus or physician. And a medicus was like an undertaker. Like doctors were undertakers. They weren't just like doing things to help you. More or less, they would just come to pick up the body and take the body away. That was what they did in the old times.
Sounds about right.
That was an old physician.
Bill did that.
Yeah.
I did. I guess that make me a doctor?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Tell your wife
Sick. Dr. Bill.
that.
Dr. Bill to you, sir.
Oh, crap.
So a little interesting story on the etymology of words. So yeah, going back to the vaccines, like they made it mandatory and then they took it away. And then everybody's pissed off because they took it. And every house is divided. Take your vaccine. I ain't taking my vaccine. Fuck you. And so families are split evenly across the country. It's really, really sad.
Insane.
I like people who would have family reunions every year for decades, stopped having family reunions. It's really sad.
Yep. Weddings stopped.
Couldn't go see your loved one in a nursing home unless you were vaccinated.
I
what?
know.
Everything that they have done for the past 3 years has been to try and destroy the family. Period. Every rule they've implemented has made it harder to have a family.
No, your government loves you, and they only want what's best for you.
Right.
And some people are still so brainwashed that the family is still divided to this day.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. To let
let anything like that come in between family members is absurd.
It's
Um,
it's a deep running thing, like subject. You know what I mean? You never really truly know a person until you start hitting those buttons,
right.
and
Yeah.
it's pretty wild, man. Like, I remember when it first was coming around, and it was just mentioned in my family over dinner or something. Like, you know, it was one of those. And right before they came out, the shots came out, and it was like, I ain't taking that damn thing. And my dad's like, yeah, I ain't either. They haven't even, you know, they're skipping the human trials. And, you know, his wife, my stepmother, she's a doctor. And she's just like, well, what do you mean? What's wrong with that? What's wrong? What, now vaccines are bad? And it was just like, no, I'm not saying that, even though, you know, in the back of my head I was, but it was just like, I'm just saying they're kind of skipping the human trial or skipping the animal trials and going straight to humans. Like, we're kind of the rats now. I mean, that doesn't bother you,
Right.
you know? And it was just this silence. And like, she just kind of got up and walked away. And it was like, okay, that was, yeah, let's not go there anymore, you know? And and that was a mild case. You know, I can't even imagine just knock down, drag out fights, screaming, I never want to see you again. You're crazy, you know? And
why does that question make you mad, though? You know?
Yeah.
You're right. Because it's been ingrained in you. That,
My favorite,
go
I
ahead.
was gonna say my favorite thing was when people would say, why won't you take the vaccine? I'm like, well, Trump took the vaccine. You should be praising him, right?
Oh, yeah, that one. Yeah.
You should be singing his praises. He's still promoting the vaccine.
My mom was like, she said that one because she's hardcore Dem and all that. And we, you know, we used to go at it like playfully, though. She's cool about it, you know.
Right.
But oh, well, your God took it and this and that. And I'm like, well, I guess my God's gonna die. I still ain't taking it. And I don't give a damn.
Right. That's to tell you that I'm not following Trump because of it's Trump. It's because of what he says. I'm thinking for myself.
Right. And standing for and being against the grain, and the one that wasn't, you know, quote, supposedly wasn't chosen, right, and an outsider and all that. So, but yeah, man, it's pretty wild, dude, with the family things and all that too. And what better way to you know, have a little bit of population control and then break up some families if you could do that as well, you know?
Yep.
Bring everybody's energy down.
Oh yeah.
Impose some taxes, put people under the thumb a little more.
Yeah, a little bit. So we've learned a lot about COVID and vaccines tonight. Very happy about that.
I got one more thing to share with you on vaccines.
Please.
So I'll drop. Did I drop it into the Twitter real quick? Let me see. Yeah, I did. I did drop it on my Twitter. Y'all, it'll be there for y'all to share.
Okay.
All right.
It's labeled under everyone who took the vaccine was part of the clinical trial. The clinical trial ended December 29th, 2022.
Damn.
So here is the clinical trial from the government website, the clinicaltrials.gov. And the name of the trial, right? You're going to love the name of this trial. It's called A Study to Evaluate the Efficacy, Safety, and Immunogenicity of the mRNA 1273 vaccine in adults aged 18 years and older to prevent COVID-19. So it failed in every part of the aspects of that entire title, right? There's no prevention of COVID-19 with the vaccine.
Of course.
What?
Right? What? So you scroll down on this webpage, the trial started in June 2020, and it was supposed to end in October 30th of 2022. They extended it to December 29th, 2022.
Jeez.
So everybody who took the vaccine, you are all part of the biggest clinical trial to ever occur in human history.
Damn.
I've been saying that for a couple of years now.
I mean,
And I guess anyone who didn't take the vaccine is also involved in that trial.
They're the
Oh yeah, we were the control.
the control.
We were the control.
Exactly.
nice.
See?
Great point. Great point.
Yeah. I didn't stroke out anywhere.
What were you? All right, Ted, you were gonna segue. I know you were.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I was gonna say I would feel remiss if I didn't bring up Flat Earth with you, Discord man.
Oh, jeez.
Why would you do that, dude? You know I'm a flat earther.
I know. I want you to tell people about the work you do for Flat Earth. Like, tell people where to find all the stuff you do.
So, yeah. So if you go to my pinned tweet on Twitter, right, I talk about um, Nephilim shit, and I talk about like the fallen angels and all the different religions and how they're all tied together.
Mm-hmm.
And I must have spent 6 months at least, like deep dive into this because I'm like, now I have to learn about every religion and how the stories go and everything like that. And then it eventually led to Enoch. Like I'm like, okay, fine, I'll finally read Enoch because I was one of those Bible people. It's like if it's not in the Bible, I'm not going to read it. It's sacrilege, blah 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 blah. So I'm expanding my mind, right? So I read Enoch and I'm like, holy shit, they are all the same story. And so I tell one of my friends, I was telling y'all earlier today about Kiwi and Sue.
Yeah.
And Kiwi is a flat earther as well. Sue's learning and everything. But I told Kiwi like the whole story. Like it's like 30 minutes long. I'm telling them the story. Like how our leaders still worship the ancient deities and like everything happened before the flood. They all died in Ragnarok. Ragnarok was the flood. If you ever look into that, it's like the craziest thing. Like everything just like all panned out. It's all the same story. And that is amazing, dude. He's like, you know what all those people had in common? I was like, what? He goes, they were all flat earthers. I was like, fuck no, dude. I was like, fuck no. I was like, no, it can't be. But you know what? For the sake of doing research, let me look into this. So I'm like Googling flat earther, like what do flat earthers think and yada, yada, yada. And everything that results back is how to debunk the flat earth. Like it is like locked tight on this. Like, fuck the flat earth, you know? And I'm like, it's got to be true. Like it has to be like, I've never seen anything this censored. Like I've always been able to work around the algorithm in the search engines. And so I'm like, man, it's got to be true. And so him and I were talking about it and, you know, just it kind of makes a little bit of sense on everything. And so like I'm doing my own research in the meantime on my own. This is like August of 2021. And a guy that I was working with at the hospital, one of the nurses, we were bullshitting about conspiracy theories, and he's like, "You want to know something crazy?" I was like, "What's that?" He's like, "You know, my job before this was I worked out in the oil field, right?" I was like, "Yeah." And he goes, "It was just crazy how flat everything was." He's like emphasizing, right, how flat everything was, and like I could see an oil derrick like 40 miles away, and I'm like, "Are you a flat earther?"
Nice.
And he's like, I'm not saying I'm a flat earther. I'm just saying, like, it should look into it. I'm like, really? He's like, hey, check out this app that I have. So he showed it to me. I downloaded it. It's Dave Weiss's
nice
24/7 clock app. And so I go on there and I'm like reading through all this, watching the videos, and I'm just hooked. Like, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. That makes sense. And then I see all these Discord channels, right? And one of them I finally signed up for Discord. I'm like, no, I'm tired of like jumping around from all these different social medias. So I finally signed up on Discord and I joined the Flat Earth 24/7 Discord channel. And like ever since then, I just joined their live streams all the time, and I get my ass chewed for like, you know, saying the wrong thing or whatever. But you know, you learn how to debate these motherfuckers and how to be logically sound in your reasoning.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I got my start. So, you know, it's funny, Halloween is my anniversary every year for joining Flat Earth.
That's awesome.
That's pretty rad. How many years total now?
2 years. 2 years I've been like a legit Flat Earther.
Wow.
Oh, so he's got that fire.
Yeah, he does.
Oh man, I
miss
miss
it.
that. we just weren't on social media when we had that fire. It was just like we would just call each other for like hours, just like talk about it. Like, oh my god, you see this video? Oh my god! It was just him and I back and forth, and there really wasn't anywhere to go, you know. So it was almost like by design that all this stuff came together and merged together, you know.
For sure.
It's crazy.
Yeah, I was like lone wolfing it on Twitter, and then but like I would always go back to 24/7, and that's where I would like cut my teeth. And you know, like I kind of like got to know Indio pretty well, Indio 007. And he like, so he explained like how perspective works and how refraction works and everything like that. He's like, well, if you don't have a brain for it, you're not gonna understand it. And he's explaining it to me, and I'm like logically following everything. So him and I were kind of like cool after that. And then I followed him on Twitter, and then like he shows up in my alert that he's in a chat, and so I joined just to listen in. I'm probably in there for about an hour. I'm like, you know, there's some mics open. Let me go ahead and grab a mic, and you know, it's Sacred and Proud's Flat Earth Fridays, and like history ever since, man.
That's awesome.
It's the way to do it. Get
Yep.
in there.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you remember when we started talking about you coming on, and you're like, I think I got about a half hour I can do. We're at 2 hours, bro. that's how this shit goes. You think it's gonna be nothing, and then 2 hours goes by like that.
I love it when they say that. We're like, oh sure,
Yeah.
yeah. No, however long you want to go, for, you know, 45 minutes, 30, you know, because it gets good, and it was good.
But no, I appreciate y'all having me on, man. Like I'm glad I was able to point to a lot of different things. I'm glad y'all asked the questions that y'all asked, because it's on a lot of people's minds about, you know, where everything was. Yeah, when COVID was going, dude, like were the hospitals like overflowing? They weren't overflowing. Were we like balls to the wall and everything? Yeah, because like, you know, instead of kicking somebody out after having them for 3 hours, you'd have them for 4.5, 5 hours, and so the waiting room would back up, and you'd have like 40 or 50 in the waiting room. But then it would die down, and it's like, you know, like, oh, the news would like blow it way out of proportion.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's not what's going on, man. Like, if you're sick, just come to the hospital. It is what it is.
I got a question. How many TikTok dance videos did you do?
Oh,
none, bro.
Don't lie. If I ever find you in one,
those are only in liberal cities, dude.
Yeah, right. Yeah, pretty much.
That's true. It was like everyone's
I couldn't
dying.
believe that they were doing that.
I know. Let's do some dance videos,
dude. I used to get so angry, like, and my wife at the time, she was, you know, I wasn't.
My wife at the time. Rephrase that.
No, I'm saying
at the time, my wife. Blah blah blah.
Oh,
my wife at the time means you're not with her anymore.
Wow, dude. He's totally linguistically spotting me right now. Like,
sorry, dude. Yeah, I'm linguistically spotting you. If your wife heard that, we would never hear from you again. I assure you.
She doesn't listen to this. She doesn't take me seriously.
That's
would
true.
you? I mean,
no. No, not at all.
No, but at the time, my wife was watching TikTok, and I thought TikTok was just bullshit, right? Like, and I just hated every bit of it. And then I'd catch her like watching these dances, and I'm like, and she's laughing at it, but she, you know, innocently, and I'm just like fuming.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm like, where are all the dead? Where are all the people? Are they dying because these people are dancing?
Yeah.
What is going on here? And she's just like, oh, calm down. You know, she kindly just, you know, swipe away from it and stuff. But I'm just like, oh, it would burn me, dude.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like, you know, you'd see the news things or whatever. Because at the time, I was still kind of like half into the normie thing and following, you know, I'm not going to lie. I was hoping Trump was going to, you know, pull the votes together and do all the, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And you're just seeing it, they're like showing these videos, and they're showing them doing it and talking about how they deserve this praise, you know what I mean? And they're all these heroes and shit. And I'm just like, dude, could you imagine if they were showing like stuff from Iraq and these soldiers were over there doing dances and shit?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Like,
well, they're doing it in Israel right now.
Yeah.
Zing.
They sure are. They sure are.
That's kind of the point he's making, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Is that when there's a show going on, people have time to dance.
Hell
It's
yeah.
true. It's very
Got
true.
super quiet
So-
real quick.
Something about the vaccines I forgot to mention was there was an increase in miscarriages, believe it or
Oh
not.
yes.
Yes.
No, I know that
I do remember
for sure.
hearing that.
Yep.
A large increase too, right? Like not just a blip.
It was significant. I
Yeah.
wouldn't say large. It was up to at least 30%, I think. Like
Enough.
it was very significant.
Yeah.
Enough to be considered a good sacrificial ceremony to bail. I mean,
Yeah.
No, I wouldn't say that. I would say just like the inability to procreate, right? Like
right.
Knocking down the population a little bit.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I was just taking it one step deeper. I have a problem with that. I gotta go back to the roots and everything.
Yeah.
No,
Every
when you
time
actually
a child
actively go get an
dies.
abortion.
Yeah.
If you get an active, like if you actively seek out an abortion, that's a sacrifice to bail.
Yeah.
Sure, absolutely.
Thanks.
That's something I never got was they were like, like women's rights and abortions and everything like that. Like I looked into it, 94% of abortions are elective. Less than 1% are incest and rape combined. Less than 1%.
You looked into it?
I looked into it.
How dare you?
You don't even have a uterus. Why do you care, bro?
Yeah.
I know. It was like something stupid.
Sorry
like
for assuming.
82% of this is like something ridiculous. Like 82% of abortions were for financial reasons.
Oh yeah, it's. I don't touch on it much, but because I'm a man, I guess I don't have a right to say anything. But it's the actual statistics are sickening, and the fact that, as always, the 1% has a hold over the 99% is ridiculous.
And believe it or not, most healthcare providers, like nurses and doctors, they do a lot of research, but they go with what the mainstream says because it's whatever is going to protect their license.
Mm-hmm.
The nurses, they say they do research, but they do research that makes their statistics look good. So what they'll do is, it's a lot of mainstream stuff, but they go along with it, man. That's what really made me upset. It's like you never even read between the lines, and I would show it to them, and they would look at me like, "Oh no, that's not what that's saying," and blah blah blah. Then a year would go by, and it's like, "Damn, you were right." And all you had to do was just read it for what it was. Stop letting people manipulate you and tell you what to think. Think for yourself.
Hell yeah.
It's a large lesson. This was a huge lesson.
Yeah, and we're gonna. I didn't even tell you guys yet. So his friend Kiwi, he was talking about, we're gonna have him on after the New Year because they were big on the fronts in New Zealand of the lockdowns and all that. So they're gonna tell us.
They were
about
protesting.
Awesome.
Nice.
So
they were protesting. They got lots of videos. I mean, they were literally like walking from one end of the island to the other end.
It's awesome.
Wow. It's going to be a hot year, gentlemen.
Oh, yes, it is.
Oh,
You're going to get steamy.
Yeah. So, dude, thank you so much for coming by and talking with us and telling us about all this horrible stuff that you know. So we appreciate that. But people need to know this is the first episode we've ever touched on it on. I'm going to upload it to YouTube. I'm going to set a little clock to see how long it lasts. And we'll go from there. Which surprisingly, I'm going to say, we've talked about vaccines on a couple episodes. And
we dropped, the word here and there.
And
like,
none of them have been taken down yet. That's because we're CIA shills, but I'm just saying, I got to play the role. I don't know why they're not taken down yet. No, but
right. No, this one probably will. Who is Sheepdog? He's a paramedic. Oh, he ain't no doctor. He don't know what he's talking about.
Of course not. You're just spreading disinformation, bro.
I know, right?
Isn't that what we all do?
Just the guy on the ground who experienced the whole thing.
I know.
Right, yeah.
They don't know nothing. So, yes, thank you so much. It was awesome.
Hell yeah, dude. It was awesome.
We will obviously talk to you much in the future. And this is where we say, death faded out. And thank you, dude. It was awesome.
Yeah, thanks, brother.
We'll see
Thanks
you
for coming,
in
Sheepdog.
the trenches as always on Twitter
Oh yeah.
and in Flat Earth Fridays. Shout out to
Y'all go.
Levelheads.
No heads.
In the house.
Kids,
Is there anything else
Go
you want to
follow
say before
Sheepdog.
we roll out?
go follow Sheepdog.
Not
Yes.
you. I was asking.
Woof,
you.
woof, Bow wow wow yippee yo yippee yo.
Yeah.